Hey guys, Danny Flexen from SecondsOut.
And we got Fuad Abdul-Aziz back in the building for the first live episode of what we're calling it. We've got a name now. You introduce your name.
Chat, Shiz, Get, Banged, which I'm informed by some of our younger viewers means something to their demographic.
Brilliant. I love the name. A bit of Fuad flexing as well on the side. We've got a lot to talk about today. First of all, we apologise, guys, for being late. Technical issues can get in the way sometimes. It's the first time we're live, so just give us a chance, okay? Next time we won't be too late. But let's get straight into it. You gotta give him a little promise, a little sprinkle of hope. But Danny, let's get straight into it. We've got some questions. Let's go into it.
Well, I think you had some stuff you wanted to say first. Before we go to the viewer questions, we thank you all for sending them in. We will get to them, promise. Just as good as the promise that we'll be on time. But Fuad, I believe you want to say something about the current conspiracy theory. We all love a conspiracy theory, don't we? Going around social media about the problems Deontay Wilder encountered going into the second Tyson Fury fight. And various things have been claimed about reasons for his defeat, his demise, if you like. Tell us what you've got to say about the recent allegations about glove tampering.
Well, first of all, when it gets put out there, you're thinking, just come on, let's just get on with it. He won. This is professional boxing. There's obviously people in the dressing rooms checking for the hands being wrapped. They're checking in the glove. But then you have to take away something when I say that, Danny. This is professional boxing. We don't know what to expect half the time. Now, when this conspiracy first started off, I was all like, come on, have we got nothing better to do? Why are we looking into it so much? But a friend of mine, Champ's Side, he's been putting up a lot of content about this recently, and I've been looking into it. Now, first of all, let me make my point clear. I think Tyson's a champion. He's definitely proven his skill set, his ability, his heart, and his training sort of dedication to be at the top of the game. But when someone lays it out to you, you're kind of taken back. You start thinking. The first thing that made me think was a few years ago when Tyson was in the ring, there was some suspicion about his glove because the side of it had been taken off, and now they had to replace his glove prior to the fight actually starting. The referee saw it and he had to replace the glove. And also a sparring partner of his, apparently, do you remember that video that went viral a little bit? Yeah. Started touching his glove and he's like, where the hell's the padding gone? And guess what? People are bringing back now photos of the rematch between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, where you can see his glove kind of, a boxing glove as we've seen it majority of the time, especially if it's a fresh one, which boxers use in a fight, it's shiny and round, you can't really tamper that. But Tyson one seemed a bit flat. That's what's got me thinking. And
I saw that, and I'm sure a lot of people were then saying that image was from the first fight and that they were trying to kind of characterise it as being from the second. Mm-hmm. But it's a bit crazy, isn't it? Tyson Fury, best victory of his career, and people just seem to want to take the shine off it, which is a bit unfair. Just before we go on with this, there's a few people out in the comments saying there's a bit of echo that they're experiencing, but then someone more recently said it's gone now. Whether you are or you aren't experiencing echo, we apologise if there are any problems with the audio. Obviously, first time we've done this live, so appreciate it if you could stick with us, and we'll be working on it if there are still any problems. But yeah, talking of problems, Tyson Fury, not a care in the world, really, at the moment. And he doesn't want to talk about Deontay Wilder anymore, even though likely that's going to be his next fight, the third one, sometime in December, we're hearing. But I think he just wants to focus on the future and one that involves Anthony Joshua more so than Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, for sure. I think it goes off what you said. People want to mess with it. But I guess, for people that do support Deontay Wilder, they're gonna say whatever they can. And for people like me who just, we see these things on social media, it makes you think. But you gotta give Tyson the respect he deserves, because he got there regardless, right? He got there. He put his heart on the line numerous times against the hardest hitting heavyweight. And now we talk about Deontay Wilder. You mentioned it. He doesn't care about Deontay Wilder, but that is the next fight. Where is Deontay Wilder? Hashtag find Deontay Wilder. Because the only thing we've seen of him as of late is the twerking video. No boxing chat. No nothing. Eddie said to me yesterday, look, if Deontay's going to stay quiet and not take the fight...
Name dropping, guys. He's name dropping already, look.
If Deontay's not going to...
Eddie said to me...
No, I'm just saying... He said it on the interview. It's on video. It's on form.
It's on behind the gloves, guys.
Dylan should take that fight. It should be Dylan.
Yeah. This is going to come up because I think one of our viewers has asked a question related to that, so we will talk about that. Just to say, apparently the echo is now gone. No, forgive my childish humour, but yeah, the echo's gone. Well, let's go to some viewer questions. The first one is from @Boxing'sFirst, who I know is following us along on the live chat as well. And he says, obviously the big baby Miller situation is big news, probably pun intended. Should he be banned for life? If he isn't, what message does that send to other fighters who might be tempted by doping?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'd love you to. Go for it. Take this hot grenade.
So quick one, just a little plug-in. I made a full video on this on my channel, Vipersport. Check it out.
You're shameless, mate. You're shameless.
No, I'm just saying, I actually did make, if you want to take my full opinion, there is a video online about this situation. But
We'll sell your abbreviated opinion on here.
Okay. So, look, I really like Jarrell Miller in terms of, I've met him, interviewed him, and he's actually, Danny, I don't know if you've interviewed him, he's one of the more approachable people in boxing. He's a very welcoming person when you meet him face to face. But let's keep it strictly professional. You failed 3 times before. You failed again. This is a sport where we've seen too many gut-wrenching things. We've seen people killed in the sport. Period. He should have been banned last year because, 3 times, mate. 3 times in 4 days. Now is no joke. If you don't, it leaves such a stinker on the sport of boxing, which is already looked at as such a degraded sport sometimes because of the politics and everything that goes on. If you're going to let a guy who's failed a drugs test to make himself fitter and stronger, which essentially could it really could kill someone in the ring, then what's the point of following boxing anymore?
We've got, and it is my turn at a cheap plug, we've got an article up on the SecondsOut website at the moment from Johnny Rashman, who's a really good writer, basically saying that he believes Jarrell Miller is someone with a real insecurity complex, that he just simply doesn't believe he's good enough to win now without the aid of PEDs. Now, I don't know if it's true, but another important point Johnny made is that if he is going to be effectively banned for life, it's going to come down to the promoters to enforce that rule, because boxing's so fragmented. If he gets banned in one state or even in an entire country, another state or another country will be willing to license him because he is still a big name heavyweight. The sad part of this is the second drug test failure, or third really overall if you include the kickboxing one, has made him more high profile than ever, which is obviously devastating for the sport. It's being painted in a negative light. But it's going to take the promoters to effectively blacklist him because there's no way he's not going to get a license somewhere. But if all the top promoters out there, Bob Arum, Golden Boy, Warren and Hearn over here, all the ones around the world decide that they won't work with him because he's tarnishing their brand by putting him on their cards. But the problem is, last time he got done before the AJ fight for popping for 3 different substances, he was, effectively rewarded with a contract from Bob Arum, who's the biggest promoter in the US at the moment and was going to be featured on ESPN. The worrying thing for Miller's team, I guess, and Dimitri Salita, who's Miller's manager, said he was shocked by him failing a PED test. Someone's failed PED tests twice in the past. The one thing you shouldn't be when they fail again is shocked. That's just hyperbole. It's just rubbish. It's no offence because I really like Dimitri Salita, but come on.
This is where I want to put in that we need an organisation body who may not look. Okay, you don't have to give them the right to make fights. Okay. Promoters, the high-profile promoters, and the drug testing organizations and the states and everything need to come under one big banner that decides, okay, here you can be a professional boxer. Why is it that one of the biggest sports in the world, right? People know Tyson Fury, people know Anthony Joshua. A lot of people know them not because they're boxers, but because of their face, the brand. People know that, right? Yeah. This sport is big enough to have a FIFA type, organization that rules this and that. Where did the boxing rules come from, right? Who rules it? An 8-second count, a 10-second count. Where are these rules coming from? Make it one banner so when we have situations like this, people like Jarrell Miller can't get away with what they've done.
There's been a lot of kind of accusations of hypocrisy online as well, and that some of the people, some boxers especially, coming out criticising Miller for the failed drug test, saying he's putting his potential opponent's life in danger and so on, are people that maybe share a stable or even share a gym in some cases with boxers who've also been failed drug tests or brought back adverse findings in the past. It must be a difficult situation for boxers when something like this happens, because on the surface, every professional athlete will be against drugs and wouldn't want to go in against someone who's got those advantages. You think someone like David Price, who's faced numerous opponents who've had infractions. But then if you've got someone in your own gym who has failed before or returned an adverse test, but by the same token, they've got an excuse or a reason, depending on how you look at it, how do you as a fighter deal with that? How can you criticise one guy for doing the same thing as your friend? Is it just because you know them better and you believe their excuses?
Yeah. Well, that's just a sort of optional question, isn't it? It kind of comes down to the person. It really does. But I love the sport of boxing, but at times like this, I can't stand it, honestly. Like, there's times like this where I turn my back to boxing and go watch the Premier League, because honestly, they're destroying such a beautiful sport. You know, people work their asses off to get to a stage, and for someone to ruin it and really give it some bad press, it's not nice for anyone involved.
Well, let's move on to our next viewer question, and it's just an inkling from the tone of the question. I could be wrong, but I don't think they're the biggest fan of Eddie Hearn. Let's find out. It's from Sir RHF, which apparently stands for Ruiz Hauser Fitz. Perhaps his three biggest heroes. I can't complain too much about that trio. And he says, why does Whyte and Hearn, bad grammar, I hate bad grammar, why do Whyte and Hearn? Dude, it's a plural, come on.
All right,
why do Whyte and Hearn do more talking about other fighters than the one he's got lined up on pay-per-view? Is it because he, meaning Alexander Povetkin, I suppose, is a 40-year-old and a complete joke of a pay-per-view card from top to bottom? Wow, scathing stuff.
First of all, they do talk about Alexander Povetkin. Every time you ask Eddie a question, he says, but Dillian Whyte has to face Alexander Povetkin first. And Alexander Povetkin is no joke. Dillian himself has said before, look, this is all I'm focusing on. He said it at the press conference, Povetkin's dangerous. I need to deal with him. Why do they talk about other opponents? Hey, because Dillian Whyte's been sat #1 for 3 years. Who's going to give him the shot? If you were waiting to play in a Champions League final, your team, you wouldn't be talking about the guy you're having a friendly with, the team you're having a friendly with. You want to play in the Champions League final to win the trophy, right? So, of course, he's going to be talking about other opponents. But they always talk about Povetkin. I don't know what he's missed.
It's almost like waiting 30 years for your next league title, I suppose. So a wait that is now thankfully over for my team, Liverpool, with an assist from Fuad's team, Chelsea. Well, I'm sure they wouldn't have liked it that way, but hey, lesser of two evils, perhaps. But getting back to boxing, yeah, Dillian Whyte has been #1 for 3 years. He's only been mandatory for just less than a year, though, it should be pointed out, beating Oscar Rivas last July and solidified his mandatory position there. It's a difficult one with Dillian Whyte because he hasn't been treated entirely fairly all the way through, but then critics will point to the fact that he's turned down certain opportunities as well. Foremost, the Anthony Joshua fight at Wembley because he wasn't happy with the terms offered. I have sympathy with him for that one, though, because he went away and became a pay-per-view headliner in his own right and has probably built himself into a bigger attraction should the AJ fight happen down the line. So I respect him for that one, but not going to fight Pulev in Bulgaria. Hughie Fury stepped in, not taking that second eliminator from the WBC against Luis Ortiz. So there's only a certain amount of sympathy you can have given the decisions he's made. And, you know, there was all the furore after the Ruiz fight until he was eventually exonerated by UCAD after what happened with the adverse findings on the drug test. So you can go back and forth on it. I think Povetkin presents a real challenge. And I don't think it's so much that Hearn and Whyte are choosing not to talk about him, as you said. I think it's more that the media and the fans are focusing on what could come in the future. And whenever you do an interview with Eddie Hearn or Dillian Whyte, that's what people want to talk about. And obviously there's been back and forth on social media just this week between Whyte and Tyson Fury. You know, Dosser here, Gypsy, what did he call him? It was a play on Gypsy King, I can't remember. Yeah. Gypsy Coward. Gypsy Coward. Not the best play on Gypsy King. I could have thought of at least 5 better, but let's move on from that. But they've been going back and forth with each other, and people are more interested in that. Let's be honest, Povetkin against Whyte is not as interesting as Joshua Fury or Fury Whyte or even Whyte Joshua rematch. There's no getting around that. But it's still a very good fight between two top 10 heavyweights, in my view. And the person and the guy who said, you know, is it a bad pay-per-view from top to bottom? I think you have to wait and see what happens with the Katie Taylor situation. I'm sure we're going to talk about that.
I still I still don't think it's a bad pay-per-view card. It's going to depend on how much they're going to charge for the pay-per-view. But the other two fights, I'm sorry, but they're good as well. As in, like, for domestic
Clay
level, little
Congo's a
scrap.
really good fight.
Clay Congo's is a solid fight. People that don't appreciate Clay Congo on the undercard of this fight, come on, man. You got a little heavyweight scrap with Simon Vivilli and Fabio Wardley. I think that'll be the first fight on the card. Nice little heavyweight scrap. Enjoy that. I'm sure they're adding one more fight on that card as well. And you're right, Katie Taylor's fight, whether it's going to be Serrano, but hey, it could be Persoon. Persoon's in line. We've seen that Chantel Cameron wanted a shot as well, as she's up there in the position. It's going to be a good fight for Katie either way.
Who would you pick her to fight? We might as well segue into this. If Amanda Serrano is willing to do it with the 8 weeks training she's got the time for now, if she can get into gyms and so on, you know, it's quite difficult for her in New York at the moment. Who would you like to see Katie Taylor fight on the 22nd of August? Serrano, Persoon or Cameron?
I think, first of all, I'm going to go with Serrano because I feel like they've built up a little bad blood. You know, we want to see Katie Taylor, how she handles the New York beef that Amanda Serrano is going to bring with her. And I think Amanda Serrano, you know, we always say is one of the most underrated because she's been in, you know, I'm going to say it because she's female. The achievements she's done in boxing is underspoken, you know. So Serrano's she's a class fighter. She's got a brilliant skill set. I want to see how Katie deals with that. She brings a new challenge to the table. I think the Persoon fight, if the Serrano fight doesn't happen, is the one I want to see because we know what happened in the first fight. The reason I'm putting Persoon to the side ahead of Amanda is not only because I want to see how Katie deals with Amanda, is I feel like the Persoon-Taylor fight is definitely made for an arena fight because a lot of people know what happened. And for women's boxing, that's going to be big because, you know, like I said, everyone knows what happened in the first fight.
We put an article up earlier about Taylor Serrano because Chantel Cameron's team sent out that press release saying she's willing to step in. I think I called it something like Taylor Serrano in doubt. It should have been Serrano on the rocks. And I really hate myself now for not thinking of that, you know, world-class pun at the time. I think I'd quite like to see a Cameron fight. But the only thing I'd say is if Chantel steps in at short notice, it kind of demeans what could be a massive fight a little bit because she's taking it at short notice. There's less time to market it and to make it a real big fight, which it deserves to be. You know, it's a British mandatory challenger and a British undisputed... sorry, not British, an Irish... Oh, that would have really annoyed me. Irish. She's Irish. She's not British. I don't know why I said that. Irish undisputed world champion going up against each other. And it's a rivalry that's been brewing for a long time. You know, Cameron's up to Taylor in the past. Probably still looks up to her a bit now, but feels she's got the beating of her. And as today's press release said, by stoppage or KO. So I think that's the one I'd most like to see. I just don't know if there's long enough to make it the big event it really deserves to be. I think it could probably be a main event in its own right rather than chief support.
So, talking about this situation, though, I just want to plug in a little thing. Apparently, Amanda Serrano originally didn't want to fight right now is because she's been offered some sort of money to be on a reality TV show in Mexico or something.
Yeah, on
so I don't know if it's some sort of Love Island I don't know what's going on, but that's an interesting little spice to the whole situation.
Yeah, Eddie was saying about that. He kind of threatened legal action against the producers to make sure they didn't interfere with his existing contract. And I think he also claimed that he's given Serrano an advance on her purse for the Taylor fight. So you can understand why he feels aggrieved. But I think it's one of those where it's not Eddie's fault and it's not really Serrano's team's fault. It's circumstance. Katie Taylor's training in Vernon, Connecticut, which is where she's got a house and where her trainer's based, Ross Eneme. And presumably he's got private gym facilities where he lives and she can train and it's all good. Whereas in the neighbouring state, in New York, COVID-19 cases are going up. All the gyms remain closed. Serrano could probably get into private gyms on a case-by-case basis, maybe now and again, but it's hard for her to train as much as she should. And I said this on the vlog recently, that if she can't train to what she feels is optimal for the biggest fight of her life, I can understand her not wanting to take the fight. However, she has signed a contract. So it's a very tricky situation. We're going to have to see how it all unfolds. We'll go to the final viewer question. It's another Eddie Hearn-based one. What a shocker. He seems to be the man of the moment. It's from S. James, or at James1776_S. Should have just called yourself James. Eddie Hearn, Sky Sports platform, IFL views behind him, $1 billion DAZN money, overachieving, underachieving, or so-so?
I think he's on the right track. I don't think he's underachieving. I don't think he's overachieving. I don't think he's so-so. I think he's on the right track, The last, obviously, we can't really compare anything to the pandemic situation because guess what? A lot of people don't care about boxing when there's a global pandemic going on. But prior to the global pandemic, the man, you gotta give him credit, man. Like you just have to. The guy's changed the sport of boxing in the UK over the last few years. He's brought in even the whole matchroom production. I'm loving what they're doing. Even the YouTube situation, everything's going on a track where I'm. That's why a lot of people are becoming boxing fans. They're seeing these things change. They're seeing different scenarios. They're seeing AJ fill out 80,000, 90,000 in Wembley time after time. And yeah, I think he's on track. I guess it's a good question, but it's a simple answer for me.
I'd say he's doing well in the UK. I'd say he's probably underachieving in the US. If I had to kind of make a choice on it, I'd say the money that was invested by DAZN, the expectations of the fans, and you've got to say Hearn stoked those expectations. It's not like he played them down. He mentioned a lot of big names that he'd be offering contracts to, and he probably did offer contracts to them, but a lot of them stayed with whoever they were with at the time, PBC being one of them. And I think he would have liked to see a lot more big events with bigger live gates, better television ratings by now in the US. They've been here for a year now. I think he would have liked to have made a bigger kind of splash by this point.
But you have to think about it, though. The US market's a hard one to crack. There's so many big spots in the US. And also these big fighters are with bigger promoters in sense that he's worked with Mikey Garcia, the fact that he's worked with Golovkin. He can't, Canelo's working with DAZN, but it's not Matchroom. You have to give him the due of respect that you're going over to America. It's gonna be hard to crack, and so far so good because everyone knows him as Eddie Hearns over there. I'll tell you one thing though, once DAZN comes to the UK, it's gonna be a different game changer because that's when DAZN will properly be like, okay, if they can snap up Premier League in the UK, it's over.
It's over.
It's over. Call the
I think there was a lot of resentment for Hearn and Matchroom USA when it first started from the other promoters and even from some of the media that maybe are aligned to certain promoters as well. I think there was a lot of credit from certain people in the US saying, yeah, live gates in the US are down. Shows aren't doing that well on TV. Look what Eddie Hearn's doing in Europe. It's amazing. Look at those Wembley and Millennium Stadium crowds chanting for Joshua. And so when he decided, I'm going to bring some of that to the US, I think there was a lot of resentment from the US promoters and stuff saying, well, the US market's very different. He's not going to find it as easy over here. Who's this guy who thinks he can take over what we've been doing for years and years? And to an extent, they've improved right because he hasn't made huge progress. However, he has been relatively successful. He hasn't kind of completely fallen on his face either. And I think there's more to come. I think DAZN, as we've seen recently from the rumours, it's not a bottomless pit of money. Although the guy who owns DAZN has got a huge personal fortune, he's not going to keep ploughing it into DAZN forever. I think it's a make or break year in the next 12 months for them. If they can get the rights that they need to really push those subscription to where they need to be for like a break-even point in the next couple of years, then great. But otherwise, he's already looking to sell. There's been changes in the executive at the top as well. So there's obviously things aren't going quite to plan for DAZN either. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of maps out.
I think the AJ loss did not help either because that was the big money, taking it to the US and then making Anthony Joshua that US superstar. Him losing that fight, they had to take it somewhere else and the rematch and all that, because essentially if he won that fight, maybe he would have had another fight out there as well, and just kept a bit like how Fury's doing it with the Wallin fight and the Schwartz fight. I think that's what they were trying to build with, but the defeat really turned everything on its head. But other than that, if you take away that they had that hiccup, they've put on good fights out there. Even when you talk about the YouTube fight, going back to that again, you can't lie. Like that was it gained traction. That's the main thing in boxing. I don't care if the main event wasn't something you didn't want to see. It gained traction.
We've had some breaking news from our old friend Boxing's First, who asked our first viewer question as well. He said that from what he's heard or read, the Amanda Serrano reality show offer was for an obstacle course style reality show. So I'm thinking, I don't know, Total Wipeout crossed with Funhouse, something like that. Takeshi's Castle, even. I don't know if you know.
Okay, that sounds.
Funhouse is probably before your time.
No, I've not heard of that. I'm seeing something about Eddie Hearn here as well, that he's just spoken to the Athletic Bucks. Shall I read it out for you?
Yeah, go for it. I haven't got a subscription.
I wouldn't like to see the Zone become a pay-per-view platform because that's not their ethos. But I do think to introduce the capacity to do it would be interesting. The only way they're going to be able to air certain fights is pay-per-view fights like Fury and AJ. That's mad that that's just come out like that. I've just seen that now because we're talking about that situation.
Can you just say ethos for me again, just once?
No,
Your voice just
alone.
went incredibly higher when you said it.
Ethos.
Yeah, it's crazy that the whole thing. I mean, a lot of people saw this coming. I should say that anyway. But the whole concept of the Zone was based on the fact that American boxing, American-based boxing, was predicated upon pay-per-view. We were told, and in the UK we've been told this as well by Eddie Hearn and other promoters, that the biggest fights cannot happen without pay-per-view because of the purse demands of the fighters. The Zone came along as a refreshing, apparently, alternative. You can pay a subscription fee, you still get the really big fights, and you'll never have to pay pay-per-view. Well, we're only 1 year into the project, and we're already being told, well, that's not true. And for the very biggest fights, we will need to pay an extra fee on top. So it's a bit disappointing, if rather inevitable.
Yeah, but I guess it's kind of expected with boxing. You don't know what's gonna flip and happen next. You don't know what the next turn is, and I guess with the situation like this, you can't take upon someone's word because Fury AJ just has to be pay-per-view. It's incredibly crazy if it's not.
Now, someone asked earlier in the live chat, they said, Fuad, he's from Sheffield. Is he from the Ingle gym? Maybe they just saw someone from Sheffield who's of Asian extraction and decided you must be at that gym. But tell us the truth.
Oh my God. I am from Sheffield. I used to train at the Ingle gym for a couple of years before I actually got into the boxing media scene. And I'm still friends with a lot of people from the Ingle gym. I love the Ingle gym. I learned my trade at the Ingle gym. I learned how to throw a punch. Yes, the boy that does the media, right? The little guy that always says, "Freddy, you're back on behind the gloves, can throw a punch," okay? From the Ingle gym themselves. They taught me. Junior Witter, big up Junior Witter. That was my coach, good friend still. But yeah, I did train at the Ingle gym, brilliant gym. And I'd recommend anyone to go down there and have a session because it's sick.
And a shining example that not everyone who goes to the Ingle gym comes out looking like Rambo, I've got to say. So that's good. No English Pringles for Fuad.
Shut up.
Just regular Pringles, which are my favourite.
Salted.
Before we round off the first edition of Chat Shiz Get Banged, and I've got to say it's been a roaring success from my point of view. We're going to do our favourite fights at Fight Camp. I asked Eddie Hearn his top 3 yesterday. That's on my interview with Eddie Hearn that went live on SecondsOut today, just to say.
But my interview with Eddie Hearn, he gave his reaction to Jarrell Miller. So if you want to see that, go ahead. Behind the gloves.
See, now if you heard an echo there, it was nothing to do with the audio problems. It was just Fuad's ego taking over. Okay. But yeah, top 3 fights at Fight Camp. You can go first.
All right, I'm just going to have a look at this again because I'm trying to figure out which one would be my top 3. Okay, so I've got all of them here. I will go with the first one is definitely Clay and Congo. That's just a solid fight. Yeah. You can't knock that. By the way, I was wrong. It's Bacoli versus Kuzmin that's on that card, not Vivili and what's his name? Where's he gone?
Wardley.
Yeah. That's a good fight. I like Jordan Gill versus Bellotti. You know, I like a bit of that. I think styles make fights, and I think that's a good little clash.
Okay, so for me, I like, in no particular order.
Oh, that's two. I need to name one more.
Oh, you don't need to swear at me.
I like Harper Jonas as well. I know I missed out the main Dylan Whyte Povetkin, but and Be Different. Those are my 3.
Yeah, Hearn picked Harper Jonas actually. I think it was number 2 for him. So in no particular order for me, we'll go Eric Donovan, who great talent, great amateur pedigree, sounds like a 70s Irish singer, but won't hold that against him. Against Zelfa Barrett, who has improved no end in the last year or so. I think that's an exciting clash between 2 young, hungry prospects / contenders. So that's one. I'm trying to think what the other fights were. Yeah, Clay Congo would definitely be in my top 3. Excellent fight. Clay's on a winning run of like 8 in a row, I think. But Congo people in the trade have been talking about him for so long. Something's got to give. But excellent fight. I'm glad they were able to put that one together. And then the third one, I'm trying to think. Oh, no, for me, it has to be Cheeseman Eggington.
That's a good scrap, yeah.
Such a crowd-pleasing fight. I'm not saying you're going to see the best technical fight ever, although Cheeseman showed in his last fight against Scott Fitzgerald that he can get on his toes and box effectively if he needs to, and he probably will need to against Eggington. Although, saying that, Eggington's a former welterweight, and although he's tall and rangy, Cheeseman's a natural super welterweight and may be able to push him back a bit in the clinches. That's going to be the interesting thing. Who's the stronger man? Who's more able to fight effectively and push the other man back? But guaranteed crowd pleaser. It can't not be an exciting fight.
No, I'm very happy that one's kicking it off for us, because if you miss the action, you're going to get it all on August the 1st with Sam Eggington and Ted Cheeseman for sure.
Good stuff. Well, I hope everyone out there has enjoyed this. If you have, vote with your feet, give us the thumbs up. Not to Fuad sunglasses. Please don't base your decision on those. Let us know. Oh God. Let us know what you think in the comments as well on both channels. And if enough of you are happy with it, we'll make it a regular thing. We give people what they want. The people's champions, we like to think.
Yeah, I'd like to think that as well. And who knows, when we're back, we can still keep it a weekly thing. It'll be good to do it live in action.
Great stuff. All right, we'll see you all hopefully next week if this series gets renewed.
Awesome. Peace, guys.
Take care.